The history of the Drukhari is one of unrelenting horror. Much of it is hidden in shadow, recorded only in allegory and fable by those intelligent races whose worlds they have ravaged. Records are kept, however, tomes scribed in still living flesh using bladed quills of bone. These histories divide the tale of Komorach into 3 ages, ill-defined and overlapping though they are, each more redolent with cruelty and evil than the last. I will now go over the Drukhari history in chronological order, or at least the one we know. It starts with the age of Dark Genesis and the port of Komorach in circa M18, the 18th millennium. Komorach establishes itself as the primary nodal port of the Eldari webway, growing larger with every passing Terran decade, built entirely within a labyrinth dimension and hence outside the jurisdiction of the existing Eldari councils. Komorach acts as a magnet for those who wish to avoid attention. Then the Twilight cults in circa M18 to M20. Those leading the new Eldari paradigm of total self-indulgence rise in status and power until they can secede entirely from the physical plane. They take up permanent residence in the webway, from which they can plumb the depths of decadence undisturbed by Puritans and what they call weaklings. Over time, their sovereign estates grow into entire subrealms, many of which are powered by the energy of stolen suns. The solar systems and their inhabitants plunge into darkness by the Eldari's star theft, wither and die in the freezing cold of the void. But the Eldar don't care. The Ailing Pantheon, from circa M19 to M24. The worship of the traditional Eldari gods begins to wane as new sects and societies rise to power. The Dark Muses, many of whom are synonymous with sensual vice and sin, become the unofficial figureheads of the new order. Darkness Rising, from circa M25 to M30. The depravity of the Eldari race plumbs terrible new depths. Cults of pleasure and pain flourish in the hidden reaches of the webway, and even the core worlds of the Eldari society become obsessed with ever greater acts of excess. As the lines blur between sensation-seeking and outright evil, a new force stirs in the warp. Exodus, from circa M30 till M31. Sensing the end, portions of the Eldari people combine and modify their void ships into craft worlds, gigantic living vessels able to accommodate an entire planet's population. One by one, they begin to escape the corruption that plagues their empire. Hundreds of craft worlds sail into the Sea of Stars in search of the relative safety of the untraveled void. The Fall of the Eldari, from circa M30 to M31. A new chaos god is born, collapsing the entire Eldari empire. Slanesh, the Dark Prince whose birth screams tear out the heart of the empire and leave pure chaos in its place. The shockwave of the new god's apotheosis plunges a vast section of real space into the warp, creating the Eye of Terror. Most of the Eldari craft worlds are destroyed in the psychic backlash. Only the Exodites, the Eldari of the farthest flung craft worlds, and those hidden in the sub-realms of the webway, survive. Their species is shattered forever in a single apocalyptic instant. Komorach Ascendant, from circa M31 to M32. In the wake of the fall, the unrepentant Eldari hidden within the webway consolidate their power. The next millennium sees the port cities and sovereign realms of the labyrinth dimension grow steadily in size and influence, and Komorach becomes a sprawling realm unto itself. The Dark City thrives under the oppressive rule of the noble houses that lurk at its heart, known to the other Eldari survivors of the fall as the Dark Ones or Drukhari. Now we come to the rise of Vecht, beginning with A Legacy Begins, from circa M32. A half-born Drukhari slave, known only as Vecht, vows that he shall rule the Dark City even if it takes an eternity to do so. Vecht founds the Cult of the Black Heart, the first organization to openly refer to themselves as Eladrith Ineas, or Dark Eldar. The 13 foundations of vengeance are laid down at this time, an intricate code of dishonor destined to spread through the society of the Dark City in the centuries to come. The impact of Vecht's rise to power will resonate through Komorach's history for millennia to come. The War of the Sun and the Moon, from circa M33. The solar cults that control the Dark City's stolen suns rise in power and influence, ultimately declaring war upon the Drukhari noble houses that would see Komorach plunge into permanent night. An aerial war rages for centuries, but ultimately the noble houses emerge victorious. Vecht's cult of the Black Heart transforms to become the first Drukhari cabal during this troubled time, and is instrumental in the final defeat of the solar cults during the Battle of the Seven Shrouds. Vecht Ascendant, in circa M35. Asdrubal Vecht launches a series of punishing raids against the Imperium's shipping lanes in the Desiderian Gulf. True to his plans, this triggers a punishing counterattack from 3 chapters of the Adeptus Astartes. Vecht manipulates the invasion to cripple the power bases of the Patrician Archons, and in the aftermath takes their place as ruler of High Komorach. Shortly after, the Desiderian portal into the webway is forcibly collapsed, triggering a massive implosion and annihilating Imperial naval elements mustering for a second attack. The Cabal's Ascendant, from circa M35 to M36. The ancient Eldari aristocracy of Komorach is in disgrace. It is soon replaced by the Kabbalite system, as pioneered by Vecht and his cabal of the Black Heart. Privilege and status are supplanted by sheer ambition and murderous capability. Many elder Drukhari noble houses reinvent themselves as cabals, though they never forgive Vecht for usurping their power. And the Breaching, in circa M37. Vecht causes the hidden portals that link each Drukhari satellite realm and port city of the webway to be revealed, forcing them open and building the Great Gates, huge edifices that are permanently guarded by Vecht's elite incubi and Kabbalite warrior garrisons. Over several millennia of civil war and violent strife, Komorach expands into these once autonomous regions of the webway until they become integral to the Dark City. Only the realm of Shah Dom remains autonomous. Now we come to the second age, the Age of Pain. Starting with the Ghost Planet in 156 M35. The far-flung hive world of Auxilion stubbornly maintains radio silence after its unsanctioned decision to hire Eldar mercenaries. Though after one diplomatic gaffe too many, the alliance turns sour. Led by the homunculus Cresthekia, a carnival of pain descends upon the planet. 5 years later, a large-scale Imperial delegation is sent to investigate the lack of forthcoming typhs. When they make planetfall, they find no trace of human life signs whatsoever. The entire planet, every hive, haplock and spire is completely deserted. The battle for the Thaxar Rift in 745 M35. The Severed begin to plunder the region of space known as the Thaxar Rift. They find their effort hindered by chaos-worshipping renegades who have a substantial presence in the region. Rather than face the renegades directly, Arconariensis ensures that his foes come to the attention of the Imperial Navy and Adeptus Astartes, and a grinding war ensues. The Severed haunt the edges of this conflict, tales of murderous ghosts and xenos pirates spreading like wildfire in their wake, while they test and study the Imperium's way of war. Eventually, the Imperium's forces are reduced to a shadow of their former might. They are forced to resort to selective exterminatus to annihilate what remains of their traitor foes. While the doomed worlds still smolder, the Severed descend in full force. They annihilate the surviving Imperial Navy warships left behind to watch over Thaxari space before proceeding to plunder and pillage at will. Vekt's Gift in 677 M36. Asdrubal Vekt tricks his would-be rival Archon Kellythresh into opening a casket that has ostensibly been presented as a tithe. Held precariously in the collapsing field of the casket is the unstable essence of a black hole. Kellythresh's entire realm is plunged into a howling, yawning vortex. The Black Conquest of Yelindra in 724 M36. Yelindra of the Blackened Tear uses her preeminent grasp of the arts of Shaimesh to poison an entire Imperial hive world. Even as the populace of Tybor III are withering into desiccated husks, Yelindra is granted a boon by Asdrubal Vekt. She chooses to take a spire of her own in High Komorah, founding the witch cult of Lahmaya and training an army of deadly courtesan warriors to further her deadly works. The Plague of Glass in 926 M36. The noted Komorite artisan Jalaxlar is feted for his incredibly lifelike black glass statues of Dark Eldar. His rivals soon discover that he is using an isolated viral helix to create his masterpieces from living victims. In the fight to control this deadly virus, it is accidentally released, running rampant through several districts of the Dark City. This plague of glass is eventually contained and weaponized by the Hex, whose homunculi are intrigued by its artistic possibilities. The Slow Death of Gregus in 345 M37. The Cabal of the Poisoned Tongue comes into conflict with a fleet of orc freebooters stationed out of Gregus. Lady Aurelia Marlis is incensed that mere barbarian pirates should deny her will. Personally capturing a muscle-bound orc knob, Marlis instructs her Lahmaean poisoners to prepare a surprise for the greenskins upon Gregus. Lady Marlis's cabal makes planetfall weeks later, fighting their way into the center of the orc capital city and impaling their barely living captive upon a half-built gargant before melting away into the night. The corpse begins to shed millions of spores into the air, each of which bears a cargo of terrible wasting toxins. As the infected spores corrupt the orcoid reproduction cycle, the population of Gregus grows weaker and weaker. When Marlis returns, it is a simple matter to slaughter the survivors. The First War in the Webway in 579 M37. A coven of 1,000 Sun sorcerers from the kindled Spirit's Thrall Band conducts a great ritual in the Webway, hoping to gain access to the scream-filled city of Komorrah, the home of the Drukhari. Before their ritual is complete, hundreds of Drukhari led by troops of Harlequins pour from an invisible portal and launch themselves at the Rubricae, defending the coven. With their spells sundered, the kindled spirits counterattack, their blasts of warp flame eventually breaching the fabric of the webway itself. As the arterial walls of the webway buckle and collapse outwards, the backlash strands the combatants in a shattered pocket reality with no way out. There are whispers that the fighting has continued ever since, and that each warrior is fated to die and be reborn in an endless cycle for the rest of time. The Tower of Flesh in 796 M37. The homunculi stronghold known as the Tower of Flesh is created, a living, breathing fortress made of the bodies of those who defy the homunculi coven of the 13 Scars. The renegade space marine Fabius Bile is tutored in the dark arts within its blood-slicked halls. Bile is accompanied to the Dark City by Lucius the Eternal, who is declared by his hosts, the witch cult of the Wrath Unbound, to be endlessly entertaining, both on and off the arena floor. The Blade of Vect in 984 M37. The subrealm of Shah Dom grows steadily in influence and power until Archon Eluriak, the self-proclaimed Emperor of Shah Dom, declares himself more worthy of rule than Asdrubal Vect. Vect publicly vows that all of Shah Dom will feel the edge of his blade, much to the amusement of Eluriak's famously well-funded and elite forces. 3 solar days later, a warp rift opens suddenly above the satellite realms, and a burning Imperial Navy battleship thunders downward, plunging deep into the hidden city's heart before its warp drive detonates. The palace fortress of Eluriak is torn apart. The warp rift allows demons to invade the city, and in a matter of a single solar week, the devil-haunted realm of Shah Dom is reduced to cinders. Vect is reported to have allowed himself a rare smile at the moment of its fall. The Last Act of Lord Korsht in 182 M38. Inquisitor Lord Korsht of the Ordo Xenos second guesses the Dark Eldar raid upon the Imperial industrial world of Demoine. The moment the Cabal of Immortality denied blink into existence above Demoine's capital, they are all but annihilated in a thunderous firestorm. Korst's absence is keenly felt at the post-action debrief, however, and the Inquisitor Lord's underground fortress complex is investigated. His remains are found, spread thinly upon every page of every occult tome in his library. The Warg Zoggit in 227 M38. The Orc warlord Zoggit, famous for killing anyone foolish enough to imply he might be a bit of a weird boy, declares a warg straight into the Vermilion space rift encroaching upon the world of Zogdis. He and his boys emerge in the Comorite port spar of black blood, much to the surprise of its resident Cabal. The resultant storm of violence carries hundreds of thousands of orcs into the twisting byways of Comorar. War is joined in earnest when the Dark City turns its attention to the Orcoid invasion, systematically isolating each Orc army in order to destroy it piece by piece. However, each Cabal is preoccupied by trying to turn the unexpected invasion to its advantage, that the Orcs cause far more damage than any of the Cabals thought possible. Several districts of Comorar are toppled or burned to cinders by wave upon wave of howling Orcs. Eventually, the Orcs are corralled and over 10,000 greenskins are captured by the witch districts, packed to capacity for almost an entire fortnight. Beauty relinquished. In 717 M38, a new fashion sweeps the spires of Comorar, and soon every member of the noble houses has paid to have himself horribly disfigured. The suddenly fashionable homunculi consider it to be a very good year, but the trend is predictably short-lived. The time of reparations proves even better for business, and suspicions abound. Pandaemon betrayed. In 799 M38, the trans-dimensional satellite realm of Pandaemon declares independence from Comorar, instantly triggering a great war between Archon Q, Lord of the Iron Thorns, and the Cabal of the Black Heart. Q is ready for Vect's attack, but not for the treason of his own daughter, who reveals herself as one of Vect's many courtesans. Civil war rages for solar weeks, but ultimately the realm of Pandaemon is delivered into Vect's hands. A gruesome lesson in 933 M38. During the prolonged campaign for Massgrave, the 121st Cadian elite, famed across the Ultima Segmentum as the Eldar Killers, disappear completely without so much as a comm signal. Weeks later, thousands of headless and armless human bodies with Imperial Eagle tattoos are found roaming aimlessly along the arched streets of Comorar's Vault District, moaning, staggering, and bumping into each other before being put out of their misery by Hellion hunter gangs. Desperation's End. In 272 M39, the Imperial frontier planet of Desperation unwittingly sows the seeds of its own demise when it sends an astropathic message detailing an invasion of Hellspawn. In fact, Desperation has been chosen as the theater for the latest unveilings of the Children of Bone, a clique of homunculi who specialize in unusually large grotesques. After the desolation of the planet's cities, the homunculi disappear with holo captures of their vile creations at work. Years later, the rescue void ships that enter Desperation's orbit determine the natives of the planet to be heretical beyond recovery, for they now worship the Children of Bone instead of the Emperor. The natives fight with frenzied tenacity, for they fear the homunculi far more than the Imperium's troops, but nonetheless the world is completely purged within the space of a solar week. The Thieves of the Ice Mists in 616 M39. Upon the ice-locked planet of Fenris, aspiring space wolves recruits begin to disappear during their trial of Morkai. Each aspirant has been implanted with the gene seed of Lehman Russ, and only the strongest have iron will enough to prevent it from ravaging their bodies and affect permanent development into beasthood. The wolf priests notice that an unprecedented number of these aspirants are going missing, and after fruitlessly patrolling the wilderness of Asaheim, focus their scrutiny on near space. Sure enough, a Dark Eldar fleet is stationed above the ice caps of the neighboring planet of Midgarden. The Space Wolves mount a lightning invasion upon the Midgarden ice caps, their thunderhawks descending on tongues of flame to bring the last remaining xenos there to battle. They fight with the fury of the storm, but soon enough, the homunculi Coven's garrison there fade away into the mists, their mocking and distant laughter receding into nothing. The Space Wolves find a series of white-capped chambers leading deep down into the planet's crust. Each is empty of life. Empty, that is, save for witless brutes of bulging muscle and fur incarcerated in tubular pods, some of whom resemble the Primarch Russ himself. The Space Wolves do not speak of this day. The Dark Within the Light in 117 M40. The veiled crypto-scientist Vorsh perfects a technique he calls photonic transubstantiation, transforming himself into a living beam of light and traveling distances purely in order to proclaim his genius. He is eventually captured in a prism trap by the Cabal of the Black Sun, who use his technologies to stage large-scale terror attacks upon the peace-loving Naiad Republic. The Hunters Hunted in 835 M40. Duke Sliskus is hunted by the Grovian Fiends, an elite reptilian bounty hunter cadre who have a reputation of completely annihilating their targets. Sliskus instructs his agents upon the Grovian flagship Last Chance to place a device of the Duke's own invention into the metal belly of the craft. Just as Sliskus is about to pass through an ancient webway portal, it seems that the game is up. The Last Chance emerges from a gas cloud in hot pursuit, guns blazing, and follows it into the webway. The Duke's ship emerges above the home world of the Grovians, primes and ready for planetfall. The flagship Last Chance, its navigational coordinates corrupted by the device placed amidship, emerges into the blazing heart of Grovia's sun. A gauntlet thrown In 226 M41, Lilith Hesperax issues a challenge to the Dark City. Should anyone produce an inhabitant of real space that can pose her a genuine challenge in the arena, that individual will be honored beyond their wildest dreams by Hesperax herself. The competition sparked by this challenge is immediate, violent, and widespread. Archons lead raiding parties to strike at the length and breadth of the material realm, returning with ever mightier champions and deadlier monsters trammeled in their holds. Yet Hesperax defeats every victim brought before her, carving down hissing Tyranid hive tyrants, chopper-wielding orc war bosses, and righteously indignant space marine heroes with equal ease. Archon Cargiel, the Bleak Soul Brethren, finally presents Hesperax with a foe that can answer her challenge. In an especially daring and costly raid, he has kidnapped Brother Captain Cadulon of the Iron Knight Space Marine chapter. Known as the Saint of Blades, Cadulon is an exceptionally talented swordsman who has twice been declared victor at the ritual Feast of Blades. As Hesperax meets his eye across the arena floor, she knows she faces a worthy foe. With a predatory grin, the Belladonna of the Dark City goes to work, her blades ringing against Cadulon's sword in a blizzard of sparks to the maddened roar of the crowd. The duel lasts for over 6 solar hours before Cadulon finally falls, leaving Hesperax victorious with but a single bloody cut across her midriff. Amid the sudden hush, Archon Cargiel descends to the arena floor to accept his reward. Yet his look of triumph curdles as Lilith kicks the fallen Space Marine's blade across the floor to land at the Archon's feet, explaining that the greatest honor she can bestow is the deadly kiss of her knives. To the amusement of the crowd, Cargiel is lucky to last 6 solar minutes. The Coup Demons in 248 M41. The vainglorious Archon Isclith of the Cabal of the Talon Cyrix, the last descendant of a pure-blooded lineage that had lasted for thousands of standard years, brittles against the tyrannical dictates of Asdrubal Vecht and his forbiddens of old empire knowledge. Deciphering the archaic rites inscribed upon the crypts below his palace, he learns how to contact demons of the warp and bind them to his will. Though his plan takes almost a century to come to fruition, Yscliffe stages his coup against Vecht with shocking and unstoppable force. Under the soaring skycraft of his cabal comes a ravening demonic host that drives all life before it. Before the horde can wreak too much damage, Vecht activates an ancient failsafe and completely seals off the spur of Talon Cyrix from the rest of Komorach. It is not long before Archon Yscliffe finds out that his control over his demonic allies is not as complete as he imagines. Trapped with only the demon legions for company, Yscliffe and his cabal are slowly torn apart. The Reaving of Garmos in 312 M41. The Garmos sisters plunge into a war between the Imperium and the Orcs of Wag Death Smasher. Throughout the conflict, the Coven of the Dark Creed and the Cabal of the Bladed Lotus lead raiding parties to prey on both sides. They subtly tip the balance of power back and forth, extending the war far past its natural duration, and reaping the harvest of fear and misery that results. The Dancing Dead in 327 M41. The insane Archon Thindrak of the Last Hatred launches a raid on the Imperial hive world of Tamantra's Folly. During fierce fighting between her Kabbalite forces and the Talan 8th Infantry, Archon Thindrak abducts the planet's tyrannical governor and his entire sadistic household. Within the cycle, the luckless abductees have been fitted with neural restraints, dressed in improbable and torturous finery, and installed in life support tubes built into the ceiling of Archon Thindrak's grand ballroom. Trapped in an agonizing half-life, the Imperial nobles can be lowered down to the Archon's dance floor at will on wheezing brass armatures, their mere presence leaving the hall awash with an aura of pain and misery that the Comorites find most refreshing. Needless to say, Thindrak's new toys are something of a coup, her guests delighting and dancing and frolicking with the whimpering humans amid the mocking laughter of their peers. The Raven's Prey in 394 M41. The Cabal of the Obsidian Rose suffer an unacceptable defeat when they are overwhelmed by the armored might of the Cadian 346th Regiment, the Ironheads, on the mining planet of Greystar. Determined to save face, Archon Chromis orders diversionary tactics against key points all across the planet. While battle rages, a single squadron of Void Raven bombers, crafted by Chromis herself for just such an occasion, swoops undetected into the primary spoiled shaft of the Northern Polar Mines. Hurtling through narrowing tunnels and jinking between slab-sided industrial machinery, the Void Raven's superior systems see them reach the deepest extent of the mine workings. Here, dangerously close to Greystar's molten heart, they deploy a trio of masterwork void mines that trigger an apocalyptic chain reaction. Even as the Void Ravens hurtle to safety, the Obsidian Rose retreat to the webway, laden with slaves and plunder. In their wake, Greystar tears itself to pieces, billions dying along with their planet in order to satisfy Chromis' need for revenge. The Plague of Becoming in 399 M41. A narcissist without equal, Archon Vane Kayarg of the Black Myriad releases the doppelganger virus on the planet of Phlogiston 6. This transmorphic plague rewrites the biology of every living creature on the planet, forcing their features to reform in the likeness of their alien conqueror. Steelfang in 421 M41. A nameless messenger butchers the inner council of Craftworld Lugganath, smashing apart a statue of Cain and using the shards as deadly weapons. Fleeing into the webway with a holo capture of her murderous deed, the young warrior calling herself Steelfang is welcomed by the witch cult of the Dark City. She soon founds her own cult, and her teachings in the art of improvised weaponry spread throughout the arenas of Comorar. Fear the Shadows in 462 M41. The Cabal of the Black Heart strike at the hive world of Lapidus, but are hurled back in disarray by the intervention of titans from the Legio Castigatum. Mere solar days later, Princeps Gendath, the author of Castigatum's victory, is murdered on his own bridge. He is hacked to shreds within his amniotic tank by hissing horrors that slither into being amid the thrashing soup. The murky shapes disappear as suddenly as they struck, leaving only a half-frozen mulch of blood and shattered armor glass in their wake. Just beyond the door, in 346, 497 M41. It is on this exact date that word reaches Asdrubal Vecht of a disturbance at Cain's Gate. Something has begun to pound slowly, rhythmically, impossibly on the other side. Vecht stations 500 incubi to watch over the gate chamber as a delaying measure. He pays exorbitant sums to ensure their discretion, while simultaneously ensuring all those incubi hired hail from brotherhoods who have defied or hindered his machinations in the past. As further insurance, he deploys several of his more esoteric arcane weapons within the chamber itself. Ingenious failsafes that include temporal flux mines, the seventh shard, and a tri-prismic dimensional mirror keyed to hurl anything reflected in its surface into the heart of a sun. The Veiled War in 518 M41. The witch cult of the Red Grief engages the warriors of Craftworld Saim Han in battle over a broken alliance. The war is fought at breakneck speeds through the cloud archipelagos of the planet Stratos, where visibility is almost zero, and the smallest misstep threatens a deadly plunge into the void ocean far below. The warring Eldar factions are eventually forced to disengage by the onset of a vast superstorm, leaving scores unsettled and bad blood festering between them. Begins a series of raids on the planet Chogros, capturing the Ogrin natives for the arenas. When Astra Militarum regiments arrive to intervene, the conflict escalates into a planet-wide engagement. Though they fight hard, the men of the Imperium are eventually defeated. The Crucible is thronged for many nights to come as the captured Imperial Guardsmen are forced to fight the very Ogrins that they were sent to save. The Enemy Beyond in 601 M41. The Incubi standing guard over Cain's Gate report new and disturbing developments to Asdrubal Vecht. In accompaniment to the slow, relentless pounding, the gate has begun to vibrate at the microscopic level. Worse, those who stand too close to the portal report hearing whispered voices. Though he shows no outward sign of concern, Vecht continues to lay new plans. The Shadow Hunt in 626 M41. The Cabal of the Baleful Gaze and Witch Cult of the Wrath Unbound cripple the infrastructure of the Imperial Industrial World of Durondas II using sustained haywire bombing. The cult then lands great packs of hunting beasts, chimerae, and clawed fiends, the beasts loping through the darkened streets and tearing the planet's defenders to shreds. Buried in darkness, weapons fried, and transportation crippled by the haywire bombs, the terrified Astra Militarum and their civilian charges are forced to fall back time and again. The hunted survivors are finally herded together in the Grand Templum district of Durandas's capital city. Here, the Dark Eldar Beastmasters loose their feral pets en masse, beginning a horrifying massacre that takes several long and bloody solar days to conclude, and from which no human emerges alive. The Panacea Wars in 824 M41. Vecht sets his Archons a seemingly impossible task: poison the Imperium of Man and bring proof of the deed. Lady Malice proves equal to the task. Through the Harlequins, she has learned that the tech priests of Verdigris IX have recovered an STC codenamed the Panacea, a miracle cure that could save billions of human lives. Using hit-and-run raids, Malice's cabal of the Poison Tongue lure the might of an Orc warg down upon the heavily defended Forge World. The Orc fleet literally plows headlong into Verdigris IX, one massive void ship after another slamming into the world's surface to cause untold destruction. As wave upon wave of Orcs disembark from their wrecked spacecraft, the planet's surviving defenders find themselves embroiled in a desperate war for survival. Malice and her cabal swoop into the midst of the resultant havoc, cutting down anyone who stands between them and their prize. After prying the Panacea template from the gnarled fingers of the Orc Big Mech who had stolen it before her, she returns to the Dark City, leaving Verdigris IX to burn in her wake. Asdrubal Vecht is reportedly impressed with this audacious raid, even as she is setting the Imperium's miracle cure atop a pedestal in her personal trophy hall. She receives an invitation from Vecht to dine with him by way of congratulations. The nobility resurgent in 842 M41. Descendants of the Eldar noble houses deposed during Vecht's ascension, Archons Zelian, Krylak, and Ilithian attempt a coup. They successfully resurrect the ancient Archon Eluriak, once Emperor of Shardom, and the last individual to present a genuine challenge to Vecht's supremacy. However, their schemes go horribly awry, leading the Dark City into a period of strife unlike any it has seen for thousands of Terran years. As a result of their actions, a mighty demonic disjunction shakes Comarach to its very foundations, and forces Asdrubal Vecht himself to take drastic action lest his city slip into oblivion altogether. The Vandred Atrocity in 864 M41. Archon Thisk leads his cabal of the Bloody Storm against Vandred, a feudal world from which the Angel's Sanguine Space Marine chapter recruits new aspirants. Sure enough, a strike force of Angels Sanguine makes planetfall within solar days, yet they are playing into the Archon's hands. Thisk releases a blood plague acquired at great cost from the homunculi coven of the Altered, a virus that taps directly into the tragic gene curse of Sanguinius' sons. Aware of their madness, but unable to stop themselves, the Angels Sanguine butcher and devour those they come to save before falling upon each other, while the Dark Eldar drink in the agony, terror and despair. The Long Midnight in 891 M41. The last hatred ravages the Imperial Highworld Persia in a 6-cycle-long siege, using arcane technologies to bring pitch darkness to its principal hives and sending mandrakes and urguls into its confines. Many hive workers go mad with terror, but are taken back to Commodore nonetheless. It is claimed that during this siege, Caradruag, the Decapitator, selects an unprecedented 7 worthy skulls for his macabre lair. And the War of Dark Revelations in 990 M41. Tau forces defending Vigos against the onrushing might of Hive Fleet Kraken make the fatal decision to ally themselves with Urien Rakath. Despite initial victories alongside their twisted allies, they soon become alarmed by Rakath's demands that they engage in ever more costly cultural exchanges. They finally resolve to strike back when he transforms Tau warriors into monstrous grotesques and begins demanding a tribute of their sacred ethereals. The Tau muster their reserves from the world of Rubicon, yet when their blow falls, they find Rakath's fleet already gone, leaving only holograms and sensor ghosts in its wake. Panicked distress calls begin to issue from the defenses Rubicon mere solar hours later. These garbled reports tell of twisted, pale-fleshed invaders calling themselves the Prophets of Flesh. Yet it is far too late for the woefully outmaneuvered Tau forces to respond, and they can only listen in anguish to the death cries of their world. As the 41st millennium draws to a close, the galaxy is riven with war as never before. Madness and mayhem consumes whole star systems, affording the denizens of the Dark City ample chance to raid at will. Yet there are those who whisper that even Commodore is not proof against the horrors that draw near. Vekt's Declaration in 994 M41. Asdrubal Vekt looks upon the war-racked galaxy and declares this to be an age of plenty. The races of real space are beset by woes, their civilizations battling a never-ending tide of enemies, each more monstrous than the last. Vekt orders his lieutenants to take advantage of the galaxy's worsening plight, to strike wherever the lesser races are spread too thin and pillage unopposed. Slaves and riches flow into Commodore in a tide, and the Dark Eldar revel in their own unmatched might. However, all of this is but a distraction, albeit on an unimaginably vast and complex scale. While Vekt's subjects glut themselves upon the hapless peoples of the material dimension, their eyes are turned outward, away from the dark deeds of their ruler. An unexpected ally in 995 M41. The craft world of Yandon, struggling to survive after its horribly narrow victory over Hive Fleet Kraken, is forced to engage Wark Wreckfist in order to prevent Yandon being invaded again. Early engagements cause rippling damage on the Greenskin Empire, but the Orcs counterattack in force. Iyanden is left with no choice but to disturb more and more of their revered ancestors from their deathly slumbers and place their spirit stones into mighty ghost warriors in order to contain the counter-invasion. Just as all seems lost, the Wraith-kind Cabal and the Cult of the Flayed Hand burst through the webway portal at the Craft World's rear, fighting alongside Iyanden's Aspect Warriors and their Ghost Warrior allies. The Dark Eldar drive off the Orcs. When asked by Iyanden's Council of Seers as to why they intervened, the Dark Eldar reply that they find Iyanden's angst-ridden forays into the world of necromancy extremely entertaining. Danger Unseen in 996 M41. In the Undercore, the phenomena that beset Cain's Gate became ever more pronounced. Many of the strange portal's guards have been driven mad by the whispering voices that now pervade the gate chamber. Those who have not hacked each other apart or taken their own lives have begun carving "Let us in" into the walls of the chamber, some scratching this unsettling mantra directly into their flesh. The air of the chamber shimmers with half-glimpsed shapes, while mandrakes and shade ravens gather in increasing numbers in the tunnels around and about. Overlord Vect continues to suppress knowledge of these phenomena with cruel efficiency, while quietly relocating ever more of his own power base to hidden sub-realms behind multiple, well-guarded portals. A number of Archons who had believed their cabals out of favor are delighted when Vect presents them with reconciliatory gifts of prime territory, ceded from the ownership of the Cabal of the Black Heart and located directly above the Undercore. Rakav's Ladder in 998 M41. Urien Rakav recognizes similarities between his kin-frenzied reaving of real space and the blood-mad days that led up to the fall. Ancient beyond mortal comprehension, Rakav still dimly recalls that apocalyptic event. His memories are enough to prompt him to precautionary action. Though Rakav has no interest in the survival of either real space nor his own race without the living resources that both provide, his personal quest for depravity would come to a crashing end. Thus the homunculus begins stockpiling what he views as raw materials, leading raids to seize vast quantities of slaves and dragging them back to the oubliettes in chains. As the scale of his raiding operation increases, Rakav enlists the aid of several powerful covens, including the Black Descent, the Coven of 12, and the Prophets of Flesh. These monstrous cliques claim new subrealms within the webway, and begin to fill them with countless ranks of stasis pods that fade away for miles in the gloom. Each contains a living being, stolen from real space in order to stock the vile larders of the homunculi against hard times to come. The Warp Surge in 924-999 M41. A mighty storm front rolls through warp space, plucking at the edges of the labyrinthine dimension. Arterial passageways shudder uncontrollably, while smaller, more damaged offshoots tear or collapse altogether. Cain's Gate glows white-hot for several moments, and one of the mighty chains that bind it snaps with a sound like a thunderclap. At the exact same moment, every single portal within the Dark City flickers out and then comes back to life, plunging hundreds of thousands into limbo or tearing them apart in transit. The Dark City is soon in uproar and demands that Overlord Vect take action to prevent a full-blown disjunction become ever louder. Vect suspects the hand of Lady Malice in this agitation, but his attempts to procure proof are foiled by troops of Harlequins that appear from nowhere to slay Vect's agents or abduct his informants. Stealing the Void in 978-999 M41. The Cabal of the Black Heart and the Witch Cult of Strife lead a massive raid against the Imperial Navy moorings at Baka. The attack causes immense destruction and leaves a swath of the Imperium open to further raids, yet this is merely a byproduct of Vect's true purpose. While the bulk of the raiding forces are fully engaged with the Imperial Navy, a small, Dark Eldar force breaks away under the cover of advanced night shields. Led by Vect himself, with Lilith Hesperax at his side, this force assails the inquisitorial stronghold concealed behind Baka's third moon. In the ensuing battle, the Black Heart successfully kidnaps a handful of every special Imperial personnel. Aberrant anti-psychic mutants, the very presence of these so-called nulls deadens the tides of the warp and is anathema to the demons of chaos. The nulls are smuggled into the depths of the Dark City, destined for grotesque machines arranged around the undercore. Yet, though the luckless mutants are moved with the greatest care and secrecy, Vect's plan does not go entirely unnoticed, for the eyes of Lady Malice are everywhere. The Great Eye opens in 995-999 M41. The 13th Black Crusade surges from the Eye of Terror, Imperial and Allied armies flooding from across the Imperium to oppose it. Kabbalite raids descend upon real space in their thousands to take advantage of the mayhem, yet now battle is also joined in the Dark City. Through arcane channels, Lady Malice has learned of the developing situation around Kane's Gate. Fearing that Vect plans to intentionally trigger its opening and drown his rivals in demons, the Archon of the Poisoned Tongue activates assets all across the Dark City. Waves of empiric energy roll from the Eye of Terror to batter Komorah, collapsing sub-realms and breaching portals. Bands of Kabbalites, witches and harlequins, loyal to Malice or Vect, engage in increasingly bitter skirmishes around the Undercore, oblivious to the irony that both factions are fighting to achieve the same end. Meanwhile, in a chamber filled with swirling madness, hairline cracks spread across Kane's Gate, and the caged nulls begin to scream. The Drukhari Civil War, at an unknown date in M42. Though always beset by violence and strife, the Drukhari realm of Komorah has become particularly volatile since the Great Disjunction that arose following the formation of the Great Rift. Seeking to counter the Ynnari influence that had arisen in the Dark City, Supreme Overlord Asdrubal Vect has begun manipulating many assets within Komorah, seeking to eliminate Yvraine and her sect without being seen as openly murdering the prophets of Ynid. As such, Komorah has erupted into internecine violence as various cabals are attacking pro-Ynnari factions without even realizing Vect is behind their acts. One such example is the Cabal of the Lords of the Iron Thorn, eliminating the cabal of poisoned hope. Vect also used third-party brokers to put bounties on Yvrane's and her followers' heads, creating expeditions of assassins and bounty hunters in Comorar, tasked with hunting down Ynnari in the Dark City and across the galaxy. In truth, Vect needed little to push the city towards constant strife, as the Drukhari rarely required much cause to murder one another. While Vect managed to destroy many of the pro-Ynnari factions within Comorar, entire subrealms of the Dark City nonetheless fell under Ynnari control. These were soon fortified against attack and became separate enclaves of the Webway in their own right. Drazar strikes at Yvrane in M42, determined to eliminate the growing threat of the Ynnari to his own control of the Drukhari of Comorar through third-party brokers. Asdrubal Vect offered impossibly rich rewards for Yvrane's severed head, and so spurred dozens of hunting parties and feral Drukhari and other xenos mercenaries to take up the profit of Ynid's trail. Perhaps the deadliest such hunting party was led by Drazar, Master of Blades. By following Yvrane to the sacred debating fires of Craftworld Saim Han and striking from a hidden webway portal, Drazar got his blade a hand's breadth from the High Priestess's neck. The kill strike was parried at the last moment by the Phoenix Lord Jane Zar herself. The running battle that followed saw Asuriani, Ynnari, and Drukhari clash in a series of engagements that took them to the ancient ruins of the Eldari Empire and beyond. Skilled as she was, Jane Zar could not overcome Drazar in combat, for where she was a leader as well as a warrior, Drazar was devoted to bladesmanship alone. But Jane had pledged her power to the Ynnari, and with Ynid's grace upon her, she fought with uncanny speed and skill to defend Yvrane. It appeared that even a mastermind such as Vect, allied with a near-mythical warrior such as Drazar, could not engineer Yvrane's death. The Whispering God had use for his High Priestess still, and he would not be denied. And now we come to the last known event, the Godry falsehood in M42. There were other attempts by the Supreme Overlord of Comorar to strike at Yvrane. Many of the homunculi that made their lair in the lower regions of Comorar were old allies of Asdrubal Vect. They were so steeped in the history of the Dark City, so influential in their control of the Drukhari's sham immortality, that they sought to maintain the status quo from which they had profited for so many Terran centuries. The Coven of the Prophets of Flesh, those who studied under the demented flesh sculptor Urian Rakath, had devised a new punishment: to take transgressors and reshape them, melding their mortal clay until they looked, walked, and even smelt like a human being. All Drukhari found this horrifying, for to them a human form was ungainly and ape-like, a cruel mockery of a biped in comparison to the lithe and alabaster-skinned Eldari anatomy. This was a horrific punishment for a people so vain and haughty as the Drukhari, and those subjected to the treatment cried out that they would do anything at all to have it reversed. In these false humans, Vect saw opportunity, one so twisted and sadistic that Urian Rakath agreed to orchestrate it on his behalf. On the Slab-Crete imperial planet of Godry Sekhmet, Yvrane preached the Ynnari Creed to a hidden gathering of Alaitok pathfinders high in the peaks. The Eldari did not expect any of the dull-witted humans who infested the rest of the planet to uncover the location of their eyrie, and Yvrane was speaking with such passion and fervor that all eyes were on her. Hence, When the Imperial military announced their presence with a well-organized Astra Militarum pincer assault, the Eldari found their line of retreat cut off by artillery fire. The Inari and the Alai Toki fell back to the webway portal upon which they had made planetfall, only to find a strike force of Drukhari mercenary elites bursting through. Caught between the hammer of the Drukhari assault and the anvil of the Astra Militarum, amongst whose ranks were Vect's false humans, had engineered the attack, the Inari were decimated. Only the manifestation of the Incarn, summoned to battle by so much Eldari death in one place, allowed Yvrain and the rest of the command structure of the Inari to break through and make their escape into the webway.